distinguished ministers, excellencies, dear delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I declare open the 13th Conference on Facilitating the Entry into Force of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. This conference has been convened by the Secretary General of the United Nations in his capacity as depository of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, pursuant to Article 14 of the treaty. I am pleased to welcome the representative of the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation of the Republic of South Africa, Mr. Zane Danga, Director General in the Ministry, and the representative of the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Italy, Mr. Gianluca Greco, the Deputy Permanent Representative of Italy to the United Nations. Delegations will recall that Italy and South Africa were elected to the office of the presidency of the same conference in New York in 2021. At that time, they were also appointed to serve as coordinating countries of the Article 14 process of state signatories of the treaty during the last 2 years. Before handing over the gavel of the conference to the new presidency of the conference, I understand that the representatives of the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Italy and South Africa would like to make brief statements. Mr. Danga and Mr. Greco, you have the floor.
Good morning and thank you. South Africa has been honored to serve as the co-president of the conference on facilitating the entry into force of the CTBT, or the Article 14 conference, since taking up this important role in 2021. Under our co-presidency with Italy, we were happy to welcome Dominica, Equatorial Guinea, the Gambia, Timor-Leste, Tuvalu, Sao Tome and Principe, the Solomon Islands and Sri Lanka as ratifiers of the treaty. This comes as a result of the collective efforts of all states that promoted the treaty over the past 2 years. South Africa's outreach efforts to numerous countries during our co-presidency was strengthened by the efforts of our Deputy Minister, Alvin Botha, in his capacity as a member of the Eminent Persons. South Africa has been a staunch supporter of the treaty and its entry into force. Its entry into force cannot be replaced by the observance of the moratorium on nuclear explosions, despite the moratorium's indispensable contribution. South Africa has also played an active role in the work of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organization and has viewed the treaty as an important step towards achieving nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation, as well as in promoting the peaceful uses of nuclear energy to ensure socio-economic development. South Africa believes that failure to bring the CTBT into force weakens the nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament machinery. It further undermines the international community's quest for a world free from the threat of nuclear weapon devastation. It is in this context that South Africa believes that the lack of progress in the ratification of the CTBT, in particular by the remaining 8 Annex II states, is of concern, and we call on all those whose ratification is required for the entry into force of the treaty to sign and ratify the treaty. Finally, we would like to wish the incoming co-presidents of the conference, Norway and Panama, a successful presidency of the 13th conference. It is indeed time for this treaty to enter into force as an important contribution to ridding the world of this abhorrent and inhumane weapons of mass destruction that has no place in our world. Thank you.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the current geopolitical scenario places ahead of us a number of challenges involving multiple dimensions of security. The illegal war aggression triggered by Russia, besides brutally endangering civilians and civil infrastructures, evokes concrete concerns for nuclear and radiological security, raises threats across the whole CBRN spectrum, and potentially affects the functioning of the CTBT-based data collection system. Moreover, the fact that the DPRK is apparently preparing to conduct a new nuclear test casts an alarming shadow on our community's common security. In this regard, the enduring value of the treaty as a major component of the global disarmament and non-proliferation architecture clearly stands out. Ever since its adoption, and although it has not yet entered into force, it has contributed to achieve paramount goals. It helped spread and consolidate a global norm against nuclear weapons testing, paving the way for a moratorium on nuclear tests, and forged a highly effective global verification regime, with an invaluable role in providing trustworthy and independent data, while helping reduce the risk of environment and human health arising from nuclear explosions. On these grounds, we firmly uphold the prompt entry into force and full operationalization of the CTBT as a stepping stone in preventing nuclear proliferation and operationalizing the global disarmament agenda. Moreover, and thanks to the superb capabilities of its verification system, the treaty is set to become a major achievement of science diplomacy and international technological cooperation. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, throughout the 2-year co-presidency of the Article 14 Conference, Italy has spared no effort to advance the entry into force process, in one with South Africa and the Executive Secretariat, which we wish to thank once again for the tireless commitment invested in coordinating international efforts towards the treaty promotion and universalization. As the progress report underlines, and in line with the action plan's objectives, we launched targeted outreach and promotional activities at bilateral and multilateral level within the remaining Annex II and non-ratifying states, taking into account the country-specific context of each of them. We worked to raise awareness on the significance of the Convention and the benefits of ratifying it, and reaffirmed the crucial value of the global norm against nuclear testing, along with the importance we attach to the CTBT's entry into force in all NPD fora. Today, we held the fact that over the last 2 years, 8 additional ratifications expanded the treaty membership, and in the last few days, one more country, Somalia, decided to sign the CTBT. We attach great value to this conference as a unique platform to give momentum to the treaty and revitalize its cause. As 27 years passed since the process was launched, time has come to outline concrete steps to move the treaty forward, operationalize the ratification process, and facilitate its prompt entry into force. It remains crucial that all states abide by the moratorium on nuclear weapons, that explosions or any other nuclear explosions, and refrain from any action contrary to the object and purpose of the treaty. For Italy, the universalization of the CTBT will remain a key priority for the years to come. While we encourage all Annex II states to join the treaty and ramp up its entry into force, we stand ready to continue to provide the CTBTO with a financial contribution and intangible support. We would like to thank representatives from Panama and Norway, the incoming Article 14 co-presidents, for picking up the baton, while wishing them fruitful work for the 2 years to come. Together, we will lay solid grounds for sustainable development and security for all. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I now propose that the conference consider the procedural and organizational matters under item 2 of its provisional agenda. I understand that agreements were reached at open-ended informal consultations of signatory states in Vienna on sub-items of agenda item 2. The agreements reached are described in information paper 3, CTBT-Article 14/2023/information.3, which was circulated in advance to all state signatories, and it is available on the conference website as well. I would like to invite the conference to confirm these agreements and to adopt the decisions suggested in information paper number 3. If I see no objection, may I take it that the conference wishes A, to elect by acclamation Panama and Norway to the office of the Presidency of the conference, B, to adopt the draft rules of procedure as contained in documents CTBT-Article 14/2023/1, C, to adopt the agenda of the conference as contained in document CTBT-Article 14/2023/2, D, to elect Côte d'Ivoire and Turkey as vice presidents of the conference in accordance with Rule 6 of the Rules of Procedure of the conference. E, to establish the Credentials Committee composed of representatives of Burkina Faso, Japan, the Philippines and Slovenia, as well as Costa Rica, whose nomination was received after the issuance of information paper number 3. F, to confirm Dr. Robert Floyd, Executive Secretary of the Preparatory Commission of the CTBTO, as Secretary of the Conference. And G, to decide, in accordance with Rules 41, 42, and 43 of the Rules of Procedure, on the attendance of its meetings by the specialized agencies, related organizations, intergovernmental organizations, and entities with observer status, which have applied to the Secretariat, and those non-governmental organizations that have requested accreditation. In document CTBT-Article 14/2023/inf.4, the list of non-governmental organizations that have requested accreditation has been communicated. As these same non-governmental organizations have participated in past Article 14 conferences, I take it that this list is approved by the conference. I see no objection. It is so decided. I would like to extend my congratulations to the distinguished representatives that have been elected or appointed to offices of the conference. I now have the honor to invite the Chancellor of Panama, Her Excellency Ms. Janaina Twaini, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Norway, Her Excellency Ms. Anniken Huitfeldt, to assume the duties of the Presidency of the conference.
Excellencias, Excellencies, distinguished delegations, ladies and gentlemen, my colleague, Minister Huitfeldt, and I, as co-chairs, would like to welcome you all to the 13th Conference on facilitating the entry into force of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. I also wish to inform you that as co-presidents, we will be alternating roles as we preside over this important conference. The Presidency will count on having the support of all delegations in order to ensure that this important conference produces the desired results. We believe that the conference will significantly contribute to ongoing global efforts aimed at facilitating the entry into force of the treaty. The Presidency trusts that, in accordance with the mandate of the Article 14 conference, all delegations will seize this valuable opportunity to facilitate the timely entry into force of this treaty. The Presidency would also like to note with appreciation the most recent ratifications of the treaty by the Solomon Islands and Sri Lanka. This is yet another crucial development arising from the Article 14 process, and it's also a success for the countries of the Pacific and South Asia. The number of states that have signed the treaty now stands at 187, and the number that have ratified it has now increased to 178. Before inviting the UN Under-Secretary General and High Representative for Disarmament Affairs, Ms. Izumi Nakamitsu, to deliver an address on behalf of the UN Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, I wish to thank the Secretary General for convening this conference, pursuant to Article 14 of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. We greatly appreciate the personal efforts of the Secretary-General Guterres and the work of the UN Secretariat in support of the Article 14 process. I'm also delighted to welcome here the Executive Secretary of the CTBTO Preparatory Commission, Dr. Robert Floyd. The Presidency is also grateful to the Executive Secretary and to the Provisional Technical Secretariat of the CTBTO in Vienna. We're grateful to the UN Secretariat in New York. We're grateful to both for their efficient joint actions in preparing this conference. Let me now inform you that given our respective time constraints, as the conference plays out, Minister Huitfeldt and I will count on the support of the Vice Presidents who are available, and we'll also be counting on our respective permanent representatives in Vienna who will be steering the work of this conference within our missions. Let us now move to examine our agenda for the conference. In accordance with Agenda Item 3 of the conference, I now wish to invite Ms. Izumi Nakamitsu, Under-Secretary General and High Representative for Disarmament Affairs, to deliver an address on behalf of the United Nations Secretary General to the conference. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I would like to stress how glad I am to speak to this conference in person. States will recall that our last conference in 2021 was convened virtually, marking an unprecedented moment in our history due to the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. I also want to convey my sincere appreciation to Dr. Robert Floyd, whose exceptional leadership as the Executive Secretary of the Provisional Technical Secretariat of the CTBTO ensured that we not only persevered, but also thrived during such demanding times. The Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, CTBT, is not just an agreement. It is a pillar of our united ambition for a nuclear weapon-free future. 27 years since its adoption, it is inspiring to witness how the CTBT has become one of the world's most extensively backed international instruments, with an impressive 186 signatories and 178 ratifying states. It has created a robust global norm rooted in our collective repugnance of nuclear tests and our shared understanding that preventing such tests is essential to the establishment and maintenance of a world free of nuclear weapons. An in-force CTBT should be one of our highest disarmament and non-proliferation priorities. To that end, I welcome the states that have joined the treaty since our last conference in 2021. The Gambia, Tuvalu, Dominica, Timor-Leste, Sao Tome and Principe, Solomon Islands, and Sri Lanka. Your commitment not only strengthened the treaty's universality, but also its global impact. The unyielding dedication of the CTBTO in establishing a proven global verification system through its international monitoring system remains commendable. With the capability to conduct real-time monitoring of nuclear test activities across the globe, we have taken strides towards safeguarding our common future. However, as we reflect on the strides made, we are confronted with the stark reality that the treaty has not yet entered into force. The reason for this impasse is no secret. The 8 remaining Annex II states whose ratifications remain pending. How many more anniversaries of this treaty do we wish to observe without seeing it in full force? I echo the call made in 2021, urging these states to swiftly ratify the CTBT. For nations yet to sign or ratify, let us expedite our collective journey towards a safer world, upholding the treaty's principles. It is deeply concerning to hear institutions about potential backtracking on non-testing pledges. A return to nuclear testing would lead us to another age of instability, taking us closer to the edge of catastrophe, damaging human health and our environment in the process. In this context, I remind us of the joint statement on the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty by China, France, the Russian Federation, the United Kingdom, and the United States of America of September 15, 2016. They unequivocally stated that, and I quote, "Any other nuclear explosion would defeat the object and purpose of the CTBT," end of quote. In today's climate of growing nuclear danger, I call on all states that have previously declared moratoriums on nuclear testing to reaffirm these moratoriums and to take immediate steps to sign and/or ratify the CTBT. I call on states to learn from history rather than revert to it. Let us champion progress over regression. Now is the time for constructive deeds over threatening words. The stalemate delaying the treaty's effectiveness must end. While moratoriums and norms pave the way, only a legal ban truly solidifies our commitment. The traumatic events of testing stand as stark reminders of the devastating price of inaction. The urgency is evident. We cannot afford another year of mere anticipation. The United Nations stands resolute in its support, ready to assist in realizing the treaty's full potential. It is my sincere hope that soon we will no longer need to gather for these conferences, but rather celebrate the achievement of entry into force. Until that day arrives, we must intensify our efforts, ensuring the CTBT stands firm as the foundation of our shared vision for a nuclear weapon-free world. Thank you for your unwavering commitment, and I wish you a fruitful conference. Thank you.
On behalf of all delegations, I wish to thank the Secretary General for his important message delivered before the conference. We wish to sincerely thank him once again for the support and cooperation, and we thank the Secretariat for the same in the preparation of this conference. As regards agenda item 4, I now wish to turn to it and give the floor to my colleague in the Presidency, Minister Huitfeldt, who will address the conference on behalf of the Presidency.
Thank you so much, Minister. Let me start by thanking Panama for excellent cooperation in preparing for this conference. The world's first certified seismic station to detect nuclear tests was established in a Norwegian forest very close to where I now live. Today, more than 300 such certified facilities comprise a global system to detect possible nuclear tests. It is commendable that we have this proven, robust and global verification system, one that is able to conduct real-time monitoring of nuclear test activities anywhere on Earth. Norwegian scientists provided key contributions for almost 20 years prior to the start of the CTBT negotiations. This scientific work was of great benefit to the negotiations of the treaty. Norway also engaged strongly through political, scientific and technical efforts in the establishment of the treaty. The CTBT and its international monitoring is a key component of the global nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation architecture. Through our co-presidency with Panama, Norway will work for the entry into force of the CTBT. Pending the treaty's entry into force, the norm on moratoria on nuclear testing must be strengthened. But such moratoria cannot replace a legally binding commitment. We call on all states to sign and ratify the CTBT. We are pleased to see that 8 states have ratified the treaty since our last conference in 2021. But more ratifications are needed, in particular by the remaining Annex II states. Norway has actively promoted nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation of decades. Our co-presidency of this conference is part of our efforts to strengthen the global disarmament and non-proliferation regime and our effort to uphold international norms and laws. Norway will continue to take initiatives that deliver concrete results and contribute to our common aim of a world without nuclear weapons. Let me now give the floor to my colleague, Chancellor Tewani, who will also address the conference on behalf of the Presidency. The floor is yours.
Muchísimas gracias. Thank you very much.
Many thanks. I wish to thank Minister Huitfeldt for that important address. Distinguished delegates, UN representatives, ministers, civil society representatives, colleagues, all, I'm grateful for the opportunity to address you as co-president of this conference. I also wish to express my deepest thanks to member states for the trust placed in Panama to co-preside the Article 14 process between 2023 and 2025. This process is designed to facilitate the entry into force of the CTBT. Today, we're meeting almost 80 years after the Hiroshima bomb, facing the reality that nuclear tests continue to constitute one of the greatest challenges to international peace and security. It's one of the greatest challenges humankind is facing. As the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Panama, I also have the honor to reaffirm Panama's commitment to the principles and purposes of the United Nations Charter. we are committed to forging consensus to once and for all prevent nuclear tests and progress with the development of nuclear weapons. As a Latin American woman, moreover, I proudly represent a region which is a nuclear weapons-free zone and has been for more than half a century. Our mission, through the Treaty of Tlatelolco, signed and ratified under my predecessor, Juan Antonio Tac, guaranteed that we were able to restore our sovereignty over the Panama Canal, and in so doing we had a non-proliferation and disarmament focus incorporated into our worldview from the very beginning. We have proudly always defended the treaty, and we've formed that part of that treaty since 1999. And through our work, we actively contribute to oversight, monitoring, and verification systems established to guarantee compliance with the commitments entered into by countries in this disarmament and non-proliferation field. We are delighted to act as a custodian for a cornerstone of the international monitoring system. We are a convergence point for the north and south of the hemisphere, and as such we are the natural location for the REN 50 station. It is able to detect nuclear tests well. Indeed, we're one of the most sensitive detection points across the system. For a long time, we have proudly discharged that mission. I wish to convey my thanks to the Executive Secretary, Robert Floyd, for his efforts. His key role led to the signing and ratification of the treaty. I also extend gratitude to Norway and to the working teams of both countries in Vienna for their sterling work and major efforts. Lastly, I wish to thank all delegations for their constructive approach during the negotiations on the final declaration as we prepared for this conference. Panama and myself personally are, and we will always be, available to work with all states parties that are signatories and or observers so that we can achieve the goals of the Article 14 conference to make progress. Because, as a famous poet wrote, poet Gilbran, he said, making progress means moving towards thinking about what matters. Thank you.
I thank you so much, Councillor Tavani, for your important statement. We will now move on to the next agenda item.
We now move to agenda item 5. I have the pleasure of here inviting His Excellency Dr. Robert Floyd, the Executive Secretary of the CTBTO Preparatory Commission, the CTBTO PrepCom, to address the conference. Dr. Floyd, you have the floor.
Co-Presidents, the Foreign Ministers of Norway and Panama, Excellencies, colleagues.
Microphone to the speaker, please.
First things first. To all the states...
Microphone, please.
...the treaty since the last Article 14 conference. To the government and the people of Somalia, signed just 2 weeks ago. It's not working, hey? Is that better for the translators? Can you hear me now?
Microphone required.
Not so? Okay. That's unfortunate. We'll go back to the podium. Still not coming through?
No.
In the House? Okay. Oh, here comes technical support. Colleagues, apologies. Hopefully this will work. Okay. Okay, to the translators, is that coming through? I see nodding. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, sir. Much appreciated. To the states that have signed and ratified the treaty since the last Article 14 conference, to the government and the people of Somalia, signed just 2 weeks ago, of Dominica, of Equatorial Guinea, of the Gambia, of Sao Tome and Principe, Solomon Islands, Sri Lanka, Timor-Leste and Tuvalu, our deepest and respectful thanks. You've guessed, let's give them a round of applause. We are deeply indebted to them, and we have our deepest and respectful thanks to them for taking this action. You've given your voice to this global effort. And to our outgoing co-presidents of Article 14 process to South Africa and Italy, you've had a remarkable tenure in our push towards universalisation. Our warm thanks for that. And to our incoming co-presidents, to Norway and Panama, thank you for committing to drive this important effort forward, and I look forward to working with you. The Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty opened for signature on the 24th September 1996, 27 years ago, almost to the day. The treaty gave effect to the bold preamble of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty that says to seek to achieve the discontinuance of all test explosions of nuclear weapons for all time. All test explosions for all time. That's the NPT. What happened? In the 50 years leading up to September 1996, there had been some 2,000 nuclear explosions. From the 24th of September 1996 through to today, less than 12 test events. In our current century, only one state has tested a nuclear weapon. Less than a dozen. One state. A stunning change. A global policy. A change in global awareness, in global cooperation. The science of 1996 could guarantee monitoring of all explosions once the global network of our monitoring stations had been built. Now, we've built that network, and we're using far better technology than the 1996 technology. And seismic data, hydroacoustic data, infrasound data, radionuclide data, all streaming in from 300 stations around the world, all of the time. The data is gathered by the CTBTO in Vienna and is made available to all of the state signatories, the nations of the world. They can also use that data for benefits that are beyond just detecting a nuclear test. They can use it for civil and scientific purposes, research on whales, creating tsunami warning systems with more data, monitoring natural disaster warnings of other types, recording asteroid strikes, and the list goes on. This CTBTO verification system is a remarkable contribution to humanity. It's a key global asset unlike any other. It's credible, it's respected because it works. Colleagues, verification works, transparency works, and we can be proud of it, and it's the power of being together. So the CTBT has brought about a huge change for the better. So what's the problem? There's nothing improvised or temporary about our monitoring network and about our CTBTO team. In fact, they're first class, best in the world at their professional work. But legally, the monitoring system's operation remains provisional. The 1996 treaty hasn't come into force. We all know why. The treaty provides that it enters into force only when all of the 44 states listed in Annex 2 have signed and ratified it. 41 of those states have signed. 36 have ratified. So, a full 27 years later, we still have some way to go. What to make of this situation? Diplomatic momentum is in favour of this treaty and the value it represents. In the past 2 years, 2 more states have signed the treaty and 8 more have ratified it. 196 states can sign this treaty. Now only 9 states, just 9, haven't signed it. Yet, let's be honest, without entry into force, without universality, there's a sense of unfinished business. We're all here today not just to acknowledge this unfinished business, but to do what we can to move towards getting this business completed. How best to do that? Let's make the case. In our speeches, in op-eds, in our bilateral and our policy meetings, the case for ending all the explosions for all time, the case for peace, the case for security, the case for cooperation. Let's make that case loud and clear. Think how global opinion has shifted and fast on climate issues. Why not the smaller but still momentous shift in attitude needed to achieve both entry into force and universality for banning nuclear testing? That's what my team and I are doing. That's what many of you have been doing and doing so strongly, making the case. For some of you, it's meant making a decision, and we congratulate you for that. Just 47 days ago, I was in Hiroshima for the annual ceremony to remember the 6th of August, 1945. In their museum, you see things that you can't forget. A child's tiny, charred tricycle, found 1 kilometre away from the centre of that blast. On that beautiful, calm summer's morning of the 6th of August, 1945, a little boy, just 3 years old, had been happily riding on that very tricycle. A little boy. And then, no more. The weapons tested since Hiroshima are far greater in their explosive power than that weapon. Yet now, for the first time in decades, nuclear weapons and the threat they pose are back in the public spotlight. It's urgent that we reaffirm our shared investment in the CTBT and its remarkable verification regime. Today, I call for the finishing of our unfinished business in a spirit of urgent and responsible teamwork. Annex 2 and any other states who have not yet ratified the CTBT, please revisit it now. Ratification makes sense. Those states that haven't signed the CTBT, please revisit it now. Signing and ratifying makes sense. And possessor states, please recommit your moratorium against testing. Clearly, publicly, that also makes sense. Our world is a better, safer place without nuclear weapons and the test explosions. Let's join forces and keep it that way. Thank you.
I wish to thank Dr. Floyd for his important address. On behalf of all participants, I wish to express to him our heartfelt thanks for the arduous work undertaken by the Preparatory Commission of the CTBT and by he himself. I also wish to thank, through Dr. Floyd, the staff of the CTBT for their unstinting efforts in preparing for the effective implementation of the treaty and for the assistance lent to the activities undertaken by signatory states to facilitate the entry into force of the treaty. Let us now move to agenda item 6.
Yeah, we now move to agenda item 6, the adoption of a final declaration of the conference. I wish to draw the attention to working paper 1 of the conference, dated the 12th of September 2023. This document includes the draft final declaration. It has a number of suggested actions to promote and work for the entry into force of the treaty. All delegations have received the document in advance of this conference. This document is a positive result of an open-ended informal consultations in Vienna. I understand that there is a consensus to adopt this text of the draft final declaration. Would any delegations like to take the floor under this agenda item? May I take this that the conference now wishes to adopt this final declaration? I see no objections. It is so decided. Keeping with established practice, the final declaration will be annexed to the report of the conference. The draft report will be considered under agenda item 12. It will be issued soon on the ECS and the CTBTO webpage. It will also be available on the UN e-journal portal. The Presidency will request the Secretary General of United Nations to forward the final declaration to all member states of the United Nations. We will, as the Presidency, now sign the letter addressed to the UN Secretary General, transmitting this request to him. This concludes our work under agenda item 6.
Excelencias.
Excellencies, distinguished delegations, ladies and gentlemen, let us now take up agenda item 7. That is the presentation of a progress report on cooperation to facilitate the entry into force of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. This progress report was mentioned in the statements made by the distinguished Foreign Minister of South Africa and the representative of the Ministry of Italy under agenda item 1. I understand that online delegations now have available for their perusal a written report. It is contained in document CTBT-art.14/2023/imp.5. The progress made by signatory states under the leadership of Italy and South Africa in promoting the objects of the treaty over the last 2 years is indeed highly commendable. This undoubtedly creates a good starting point for the new coordinators of the Article 14 process, Panama and Norway, to continue and possibly accelerate this progress. That concludes our consideration of agenda item 7.
Move to agenda item 8, general exchange of views by ratifiers and signatories on facilitating the entry into force of the CTBT. At this stage, our 60 delegations have been inscribed on the list of speakers. I would like to encourage others who want to speak to talk to the secretary, to be in touch with the secretariat in the room. Please note that the Presidency intends to close the list of speakers at 12 noon. The live list is available on the delegate portal. The link of the list is available through QR code displayed at the entrance to the conference room. The Presidency may need to exercise some flexibility in adjusting the list of speakers. The Presidency would also like to draw your attention to the agenda of the conference in document number 2. it states that speakers limit their statement to 3 minutes. All written statements sent to the Secretariat will be available on the website of the CTBTO Preparatory Commission. I would now like to turn to the list of speakers under this agenda item. And the first speaker on my list is the distinguished Her Excellency Olivia Ragnar Nevevende, Rwanda, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Burkina Faso. The floor is yours.
I wish to express my congratulations to you on your election to preside over the current conference, and I wish to assure you of this full support of my delegation, Burkina Faso, in the success of our work. I thank the Executive Secretary, Mr. Robert Floyd, and the Provisionary Technical Secretariat for all the work that they have done in preparing this conference. Burkina Faso aligns itself with the statement that will be made by the NAM. Co-presidents, since 1996, the member states have made the clear-thinking step of working towards the complete prohibition of nuclear tests. 27 years later, important progress has been made in the establishment of different means under the Provisional Technical Secretariat that are currently operational. Moreover, out of the 187 countries that have signed the treaty, 178 countries have ratified it, and I congratulate Sri Lanka for its recent ratification. Burkina Faso ratified the treaty on the 17th of April in 2002 and has continuously deployed efforts for the treaty to enter into force. It has organized regional events in 2011 and 2013 in Ouagadougou so as to build the capacity of national data centers. It has also co-sponsored Resolution 2310 of the Security Council, which urges all those states who have yet to do so to sign and ratify the treaty. Moreover, Burkina Faso has made available to the Preparatory Commission the personnel that has highly rated experience, including a doctor who is heading a national data center under the Executive Secretariat. Burkina Faso is one of the countries whose head of state traveled to Vienna to take part in the 40th session of the Preparatory Commission, speaking before the Commission and reiterating the commitment of Burkina Faso to the full and entire entry into force of this treaty. Unfortunately, to date, 8 of the 44 states listed under Annex 2 of the treaty have yet to ratify it, making it impossible for the treaty to enter into force. We urge these states to overcome their concerns and make this important step for humanity in its steps towards the complete elimination of nuclear weapons. We are convinced that in this process, the contribution of all states is necessary. My country is ready to make its qualified human resources and its data available to the Provisionary Secretariat for Francophone countries. Now let's move on to what must be done to ensure that the treaty enters into force, and we must use this to accelerate the implementation of the SDGs, in particularly in the least developed countries and as well as LLDCs. I thank you.
So I thank the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Burkina Faso for her statement. I now invite Her Excellency Yuka Kamikawa, Foreign Minister of Japan. The floor is yours.
Dr. Robert Floyd, Executive Secretary, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, Japan attaches great importance to the early entry into force of the CTBT as a realistic and practical nuclear disarmament measure. We underscored the significance of the treaty in the Hiroshima Action Plan and also highlighted it in the G7 leaders' Hiroshima vision on nuclear disarmament. The CTBT serves to place a quantitative cap on nuclear weapons development. It is one of the few concrete disarmament measures that now has near universal support. The relevance of the CTBT has never been greater than today. Concerns have been voiced that some countries may resume nuclear testing. The possibility of a further nuclear test by North Korea looms large. Such concerns make bringing the CTBT into force our urgent priority. Japan is also committed to strengthening the verification system of the CTBT. We hosted the CTBT Regional Conference this July to support capacity building of participating countries for operating the international monitoring system. By enlarging the circle of ratifying states and making the IMS more reliable, we are already making an effective deterrent to nuclear testing and establishing an international norm against nuclear tests. But of course, we cannot rest until the norm against nuclear testing is legally binding. In this regard, Japan continued to urge all states, in particular the remaining states listed in Annex 2, to sign and ratify the treaty. Furthermore, pending its entry into force, Japan urges all relevant states to declare new moratoriums or maintaining existing moratoriums on nuclear weapons test explosions or any other test explosions. Let us advance together towards the complete universalization of the treaty, promise Japan's unwavering contribution towards this goal. Thank you very much.
I thank the Foreign Minister of Japan for her statement. I now invite Her Excellency Maria Gabriel, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Bulgaria. You have the floor.
Thank you, distinguished co-presidents. Let me begin by congratulating Norway and Panama on assuming the presidency of the 13th Article 14 Conference on facilitating the entry into force of the CTBT, and express our appreciation for the work carried out by Italy and South Africa as previous Article 14 coordinators. I assure you of Bulgaria's full support for achieving a successful outcome to this meeting. Bulgaria fully associates with the statement delivered on behalf of the European Union. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the CTBT is one of the most important pillars of the international nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament regime. Now more than ever, we need to advance towards its entry into force. Our conference is taking place under an extremely challenging international security environment, marked by Russia's illegal, unjustified, and unprovoked war of aggression against Ukraine, as well as by serious proliferation of crises and challenges. Bulgaria strongly condemns Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, which is in complete violation of international law and of the United Nations Charter. and undermines international peace and security. Moscow's aggressive nuclear rhetoric and the announced readiness to conduct nuclear tests erode the achievement of the CTBT's aims and objectives and are fully inconsistent with the fact that Russia has signed and ratified the treaty. Russia, as a UN Council Security member, must stop its illegal war, withdraw all of its military forces from the territory of Ukraine within its internationally recognized borders. Distinguished co-presidents, ladies and gentlemen, since its adoption, the CTBT has come a long way and achieved important successes. Not only has it resulted in the establishment of an effective and highly respected international monitoring system, but it has also acquired near universal support, creating a norm of nuclear testing taboo adhered to by almost all states. We commend the work of the Executive Secretary, Dr. Robert Floyd, the CTBTO Preparatory Commission and its Provisional Technical Secretariat, the organization's expertise and all its activities as an important contribution to global peace and security. Yet, 27 years after the CTBT was open for signature, efforts are still needed in order to bring the treaty into force. Bulgaria, as a country from Annex II that has signed and ratified the treaty, continuously calls upon all states, and in particular Annex II states, who have not done so yet, to sign and ratify the CTBT at their earliest opportunity. Once in force, the CTBT will provide a legally binding global ban on nuclear explosions of any kind, and this will be a crucial advancement of the goals of nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation. Although some countries are applying a de facto moratorium on nuclear test explosions, we call upon all states to refrain from actions that would undermine the treaty's crucial role in prohibiting any nuclear test explosions pending its entry into force. We urge DPRK to sign and ratify the CTBT without any delay and abandon its nuclear and ballistic missile programs. The DPRK has to take concrete actions on the complete, irreversible, and verifiable nuclearization of the Korean Peninsula and to comply with its obligations under all relevant UNSC resolutions. Bulgaria remains strongly committed to pursuing the objectives of the CTBT. We are encouraged by the effective work of the CTBTO Preparatory Commission, the Provisional Technical Secretariat, and the International Data Center on keeping the CTBT verification regime functioning. We remain fully committed to work towards the treaty's entering into force and its universalization. Thank you.
I thank the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs of Bulgaria. Ladies and gentlemen, don't worry. Minister Tevani and I will also allow men to take the floor during this session. So I now give the floor to His Excellency Mario Adolfo Burco Flores, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Guatemala. You have the floor.
Muchísimas gracias.
Many thanks indeed for giving me the floor. I wish to begin this address by congratulating Norway and Panama for successfully presiding together over this important meeting. I also wish to extend particular thanks to Dr. Robert Floyd, Executive Secretary of the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty Organization, and I wish to thank the UN Secretariat for Disarmament. Co-Presidents, Guatemala reiterates its commitment to the total elimination of nuclear tests. We will never tire of saying that it is only by having a world free of nuclear weapons can we really promote the spirit that we need today. That is the spirit of championing peace and security throughout the world. Today, we honor the victims of all nuclear tests and their memories, and we present our respects to those whose lives have been lost as a result of this tragic phenomenon that is the use of nuclear weapons and their testing. Today, I wish to express the hope that through nuclear disarmament, we will have a guarantee of seeing the non-repetition of the horrific consequences of nuclear explosions and nuclear tests and nuclear weapons. Co-Presidents, I wish to underscore the fact that this is a matter of collective responsibility. Consequently, we recognize that the only guarantee against the use and threat of use of nuclear weapons is their total elimination. With that in mind, today, we can, without any doubt whatsoever, affirm that such weapons and their use constitute a crime against humanity and a violation of international law, as well as of the United Nations Charter. Consequently, Guatemala reaffirms its commitment to nuclear disarmament in all its manifestations. This commitment is demonstrated through my country's participation as a state party to international treaties in this field, and we pay particular attention to the effective implementation of these treaties. Recently, we marked the 56th anniversary of the Tlatelolco Treaty that laid the foundations for the establishment of a nuclear weapons-free zone. As the co-president and the Foreign Minister of Panama affirmed, Latin America and the Caribbean are honored and really proud of having contributed to nuclear disarmament and the non-proliferation of nuclear weapons, but also of having contributed to global and regional security through their endeavors. Co-presidents, regarding the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Tests, the CTBT, to date, 178 states have ratified that treaty, and that deserves recognition. We urge all Annex II states to expedite the process of signing and ratification of that instrument without further delay, because that has an impact on lives, but signing and ratifying it also generates hope, and history has demonstrated that the conflicts that we're seeing today, including between Russia and Ukraine, make us vulnerable to repeating the mistakes of the past and their horrors. For example, the conflicts today recall the horrific bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. All of us need to refrain from undertaking nuclear tests and other nuclear explosions, or from carrying out any other type of tests that can affect ecosystems even, and nations in a whole variety of ways, even during times of peace. There is no doubt that together we want to promote peace and nuclear disarmament and the non-proliferation of nuclear weapons. Madam Co-Presidents, today I appeal for the establishment of synergies between the CTBT and the IAEA in order to implement safeguards which reinforce the use of nuclear energy with peaceful purposes, with purposes which contribute to civilian and scientific development. To conclude, we have a deeply rooted and urgent concern about the need to take unequivocal action to avoid the devastating consequences of weapons of mass destruction on the planet, including consequences on human health, soil, oceans, and the atmosphere. Today, I wish to underscore that we have a commitment, and this forum is a source of hope. Hope that we will fight for life and for peace. Many thanks.
I thank the Foreign Minister of Guatemala. I now invite His Excellency Paul Richards Gallagher, Secretary for Relations with States and International Organizations, Holy See. You have the floor.
Mesdames Présidentes, the Holy See thanks Italy and South Africa for their work as current Article 14 coordinators and congratulates Norway and Panama on assuming this responsibility. I also wish to thank Mr. Robert Floyd for his challenging and encouraging statement. Since the dawn of the nuclear age, states have detonated over 2,000 nuclear explosive devices, subjecting countless persons to adverse health effects of ionizing radiation and contaminating our common home. These terrible humanitarian and environmental consequences demonstrate that nuclear weapons represent a multiplier of risk that offers only an illusion of peace. After 4 decades of concerted efforts, the international community achieved agreement on such a ban, with effective verification meant to ensure that any nuclear explosive test runs the risk of being detected. 27 years after the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty opened for signatures, this great achievement remains only partially fulfilled. Amid threats of nuclear use and the ongoing efforts to modernize nuclear weapons, achieving the entry into force of the CTBT becomes more vital than ever. In this regard, the Holy See welcomes the 8 states that have ratified the treaty since the last session of this conference and calls upon all states who have not yet done so, especially the 8 remaining Annex II states, to sign and ratify the treaty as a major utmost priority. In the meantime, the Holy See urges all states to continue adhering to the zero-yield moratorium on nuclear testing. Mesdames Presidents, the CTBT makes up just one element of the wider disarmament and non-proliferation regime, centered on the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and complemented by the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. With this in mind, my delegation urges the CTBTO Preparatory Commission to explore all possible ways to build upon this complementarity by collaborating with TPNW states parties on universalization, verification, and compiling historical data on past nuclear tests, including the human costs of such testing. Such collaboration can help lay the groundwork for a restorative approach to addressing the harms caused by nuclear explosive testing. Thank you, Mesdames Presidents. Thank you.
I thank the Secretary of the Holy See for his statement. I now invite His Excellency Mohammed Badura Abubakar, Honorable Minister of Defense, Nigeria, to take the floor.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to congratulate Norway and Panama on their election as co-presidents. You can be assured of Nigeria's full support for your stewardship. I would also like to take this opportunity to reiterate the gratitude of my delegation for the leadership of Italy and South Africa in the last 2 years. Their efforts to universalize the treaty and their excellent cooperation with the Provisional Technical Secretariat is generally appreciated. Co-President, Nigeria is pleased to welcome the sisterly states of Somalia into the treaty following its signature on the 8th September 2023, which increased treaty membership to 187, leaving us with only 9 states yet to sign the treaty. This is quite commendable, as it is a significant progress towards achieving our goal and the objective of a world free of nuclear weapons. To this effect, we sincerely thank the Executive Secretary, the staff of the Secretariat, and the outgoing co-president, as well as the newly ratifying states for sustaining attention on the treaty and for working to sustain the regime. My delegation has always supported and will continue to support the CTBT, which is an important flank of global peace and security. The nuclear attacks carried out in the Sahara in the 1960s left damaging consequences in our environment, and we do not wish to see such ever again. It is in this regard, and considering other factors, that African countries adopted the Berlin-Daba Treaty, declaring Africa as a nuclear weapons-free zone. This prohibits, among other things, the stationing of nuclear explosive devices and their testing in the entire space that constitute the African continent. The CTBT's ban on nuclear test explosions is fulcrum to achieving nuclear disarmament and we would like to see the treaty sustained and its regime strengthened. In this context, we reiterate the mutual imposing nature of the CTBT with the African Nuclear Weapons Free Zone Treaty, as well as with the NPT and the TPNW. All those treaties are part of the mix of multilateral efforts to achieve nuclear disarmament, and we encourage their continued synergies and interface. Co-Presidents, we welcome the progress recorded in the various aspects of the CBT verification regime and support its sustainment, as our priority is not restricted to banning the nuclear weapons testing alone, but also underlining the importance of nuclear energy for the benefit of both human beings and the environment. My delegation wishes to state its deep regret that over 25 years since CBT opened for signature, the treaty is still yet to enter into force. We therefore call on all states who are yet to sign or ratify the treaty to do so without further delay. In this regard, we highlight the crucial role of Annex 2 states, and in particular, the special responsibility of nuclear weapon states whose ratification is imperative for entry into the force. The existing treaty passed by nuclear weapons to humanity is enormous. The existing threat posed by nuclear weapons to humanity is enormous, and the cost of maintaining those dangerous weapons cannot be justified when compared to resources allocated by state to venture that enhance socio-economic development. The threat of use of or unilateral explosions can only be removed with the total elimination of those weapons. Today's conference reminds us of the necessity of the working together to achieve complete, irreversible, verifiable nuclear disarmament, bearing in mind that the CTBT is a crucial element to achieving this noble objective. It is in this spirit that Nigeria will continue to support the TBT and its objectives, while we continue working together with our partners to achieve entry into force of this valuable treaty. We call on all states possessing nuclear weapons to maintain the moratoria on nuclear testing. Our world cannot afford another test. We must do this for the generation after us. Finally, I reassure you, co-presidents of Nigerian full support, and we look forward to working with you and your team to achieve your mandate. Thank you.
Agradezco.
I thank the Minister Mohammed Badaru Abubakar, Honourable Minister from Nigeria, for those words. I now invite His Excellency Mr. Elmerin Konakovic, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Bosnia and Herzegovina, to take the floor.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, participants of the conference, allow me to express my pleasure of the opportunity to address this conference on behalf of Bosnia and Herzegovina and present the position of my country in relation to the comprehensive nuclear test ban treaty, as well as the activities that Bosnia and Herzegovina undertakes in order to be as active a participant as possible in international efforts to put nuclear weapons under control and reduce the threat of nuclear catastrophe. Bosnia and Herzegovina is a non-nuclear country and does not possess nuclear energy or use it anyway, nor even for peaceful purposes such as energy sector for the needs of industry and households. Since the accession to the treaty with its ratification on 26 October 2006 and its deposit, Bosnia and Herzegovina, as a member state of the UN and a party to all the most important resolutions, conventions, protocols, and treaties of the United Nations on the non-proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, undertakes the necessary strategically important national and international action to condemn the threat of such weapons and their testing. Bosnia and Herzegovina also follows global and regional diplomatic activities in this regard and makes efforts to strengthen capacity for the international exchange of data on nuclear tests. The treaties on the non-proliferation of nuclear weapons and on the ban of nuclear tests and their complete and verifiable implementation should serve the security interests of all states. It is particularly important to point out that it is of key importance for the future of the CTBT that the 8 remaining countries of Annex II sign and ratify the treaty in order to reduce the number of nuclear tests as much as possible. Bosnia and Herzegovina supports all international activities undertaken in this direction. Co-presidents, ladies and gentlemen, Bosnia and Herzegovina has made commitment not to encourage or in any way participate in the execution of any test explosion of a nuclear weapon or any other nuclear explosion. Bosnia and Herzegovina will remain consistent and continue to support the initiatives of the European Union, the leading agencies and organizations of the UN and other international organizations relevant to the subject of the treaty and in accordance with the strategy of foreign affairs and foreign policy priorities of Bosnia and Herzegovina in order to contribute to the efforts to make the world safer against nuclear weapons. In the end, I would like to praise the activities of CTBTO Preparatory Commission and on behalf of Bosnia and Herzegovina, thank them once again for their help and support. Thank you for your attention.
Agradezco.
I thank the Minister from Bosnia and Herzegovina for that statement. We now give the floor to the Minister for Justice, Communication and Foreign Affairs of Tuvalu, His Excellency Panapasi Nilisone.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I extend my warm greetings and sincere appreciation to all distinguished delegates gathered here for this high-level celebration of states that have recently ratified the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, CTBT. This gathering underscores the vital importance of nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation of efforts, issues that are deeply significant to Tuvalu and the entire world. Tuvalu is one of the smallest nations, understands the profound value of peace and security. Our existence and well-being are intricately linked to the principles enshrined in the United Nations Charter, which emphasizes the imperative of peace. The CPT stands as a pillar of global security and represents the shared commitment of nations to rid the world of nuclear weapons testing. It is a testament to our collective determination to prevent the proliferation of these devastating weapons and to promote disarmament. Tuvalu welcomes and applauds those states that have recently ratified this important treaty. However, our celebration today must also serve as a call to action. While we acknowledge the progress made in recent ratifications, there is much work ahead of us. The CTBT has not yet entered into force, and nuclear testing continues to pose a grave threat to global peace. It is our collective responsibility to ensure that the CBT becomes legally binding and that nuclear testing becomes a relic of the past. The humanitarian consequences of nuclear weapons are undeniable. These weapons have capacity to inflict unimaginable suffering on humanity, and their use would have catastrophic consequences for the environment and future generations. We must, therefore, remain steadfast in our commitment to the total elimination of nuclear weapons. Tuvalu, although small in size, remains unwavering in its commitment to a nuclear-free world. We call upon all nations to join us in this noble endeavor, and for nuclear-armed states engaged in meaningful disarmament efforts to fulfill their obligations under the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, NBT. Global challenges require global solutions. As we celebrate the ratifications of the CTBT, we must also strengthen our partnerships and cooperation to advance disarmament and non-proliferation goals. Together, we can create a safer and more secure world for all. In conclusion, Tuvalu firmly believes that the elimination of nuclear weapons is not just an aspiration, but an achievable goal. I thank you all for your dedication to this critical cause, and I express our hope for a peaceful, nuclear-free world where all nations can thrive in harmony. Thank you.
We thank the Minister of Justice, Communication and Foreign Affairs of Tuvalu. I now invite His Excellency Burak Askapar, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Turkey, to take the floor.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I should start by expressing our strong appreciation for the work and efforts undertaken by Italy and South Africa in their role as Article 14 co-presidents. We congratulate Norway and Panama on their assumption of the presidency and assure them of our full support. We also thank Dr. Floyd for his dedicated work as Executive Secretary of the CTBTO and his entire team. It is an honor as well to be addressing this conference also in the role of co-vice president. That is also a demonstration of our enduring commitment to the entry into force of the treaty. Since we last met, our world has not become safer or more secure, and proliferation concerns have not diminished. The ongoing war in Ukraine is having a lingering impact on global security, in addition to brutal damage and destruction in Ukraine, as well as challenges to European security. Heightened nuclear rhetoric and risks for a nuclear accident are of serious concern. In such difficult times, it becomes even more important to uphold existing instruments and not to allow for their dismantling. Turkey was among the first countries to have signed the CTBT and ratified shortly afterwards. We remain committed to the treaty and also pursue active cooperation with the CTBTO at the technical level, including through its international monitoring system. We regret that in the 27 years since its opening to signature, the treaty has still not entered into force. Yet the CTBT constitutes a fundamental instrument to support efforts for nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation. As such, we welcome the recent ratification by Sri Lanka and the most recent signature by Somalia. We urge once again the remaining 8 Annex II states to sign and ratify the treaty without further delay. Until its entry into force, it is critical that all states maintain or implement moratoria on nuclear tests and to refrain from action that would undermine the object and purpose of the treaty, particularly under the challenging circumstances of today. We're particularly concerned with the unprecedented increase in missile launches and tests, both by quantity and type, by the DPRK since last year, and the work for its nuclear program, as very recently reported by the IAEA. We call upon the DPRK to comply with its obligations under the relevant UN Security Council resolutions and refrain from actions that may lead to further tensions in the region. In conclusion, I should reiterate our commitment for sustained political engagement in raising broad awareness about the objectives of the treaty and encouraging its ratification. Turkey will continue to pursue these efforts both on a bilateral level and multilaterally, most notably through the Non-Proliferation and Disarmament Initiative. Thank you for your attention.
We thank His Excellency Burak Aksapar, Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs of Turkey, for that address, and we now offer the floor to His Excellency Charles Jose, Under Secretary for Multilateral Affairs and International Economic Relations of the Philippines.
co-presidents, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the Philippine delegation would like to express our appreciation to the co-presidents for your outstanding work in preparation for the 13th Conference on Facilitating the Entry into Force of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. My delegation remains fully committed to actively participating in the CTBTO, which has been consistently achieving consensus in its work, particularly in the various working groups and during the 60th session of its preparatory commission held this year. Regrettably, not all international forums on disarmament enjoy the same status. Our community in the CTBTO is special, and apart from full participation in all of the CTBTO's scientific and verification-related functions and programs, it is this spirit of consensus that we would want the remaining Annex II states to fully share and benefit from. My delegation joins other delegations in strongly calling on all remaining Annex II states to sign and ratify the CTBT unconditionally and expeditiously. As we convene at this 13th Article 14 conference, my delegation underscores the importance of progress towards this crucial endeavor, and we express our unwavering support for the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty as manifested through the following. First, the Philippines co-sponsored resolutions on the CTBT in the 75th, 76th, and 77th sessions of the United Nations General Assembly, urging ratification of the CTBT by all states, particularly Annex II states. Second, the Philippines supported the resolution on cooperation between the United Nations and the Preparatory Commission for the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organization at the 75th and 77th sessions of the General Assembly, reaffirming our commitment to collaborative efforts in achieving the CTBT's objectives. Third, the Philippines hosts and maintains 3 stations of the International Monitoring System and actively participates in and champions the CTBTO's various programs and initiatives. And fourth, in various disarmament forums, the Philippines continues to emphasize the importance and urgency of CTBT's entry into force, call on the remaining Annex II states to ratify the treaty, and stress the need for universal ratification. These are just some of the Philippines' consistent contributions that, when combined with similar efforts of other state signatories, pose a compelling question. After 27 years of operating provisionally, how much longer must we wait? Co-presidents, today we welcome the 187 countries that have signed and the 178 countries that have ratified the treaty. The aspiration for universal adherence holds special significance for all states, particularly the nuclear weapon states, which have a vital role in nuclear disarmament. My delegation extends its appreciation to the CTBTO Provisional Technical Secretariat, CTBT state signatories, friends of the CTBT, and other multilateral mechanisms, including those within the UN, for undertaking actions that are supportive of ratification of the treaty. We acknowledge and appreciate the leadership of Norway and Panama in this conference and recognize the ratification of the treaty by Comoros, Cuba, Dominica, Equatorial Guinea, Gambia, Sao Tome and Principe, Solomon Islands, Timor-Leste, Tuvalu, and most recently, Sri Lanka, as well as the signing of the treaty 2 weeks ago by Somalia, bringing us closer to the CTBT's universalization. For the past few weeks, our delegations in Vienna labored to achieve a final declaration for this conference, a text that was finalized after almost 40 long hours of negotiations. This process reflects the growing complexity of our international landscape, yet gives us hope that despite all the uncertainty, we can still achieve consensus on the most challenging issues. We must maintain this positive momentum as we collectively strive for complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization in a peaceful manner. The Philippines stands united with the global community to achieve the noble objectives set forth by this treaty. Thank you.
We thank His Excellency Charles Jose, Under-Secretary for Multilateral Affairs and International Economic Relations of the Philippines.
The floor to Mr. Tobias Lindner, Minister of State of the Federal Foreign Office of Germany.
Distinguished co-presidents, excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, since the beginning of the nuclear age, more than 2,000 tests have taken place. 30 years ago, negotiations on a comprehensive test ban treaty began and were successfully concluded in 1996. The treaty now counts 178 ratifications and 187 signatures. And we commend the Solomon Islands and Sri Lanka for recently completing ratification and Somalia for recently signing the CTBT. The CTBT presents a milestone of nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament. Because the way to a world without nuclear weapons is through a world without nuclear testing. Ending nuclear testing once and for all will constrain both the proliferation and the development of nuclear weapons. It will strengthen responsibility in nuclear affairs and facilitate nuclear disarmament. In our present time, when international law is blatantly violated by Russia and the arms control architecture severely damaged, it is more ever challenging to advance nuclear arms control, disarmament, and non-proliferation. There are no low-hanging fruits. The current bleak situation also makes it very clear why the CTBT is so important and dear to us. In a time where arms control treaties are undermined, terminated, and violated, where trust is at a historical low, this treaty, which is regrettably not yet in force, already makes a concrete difference that directly contributes to a safer world for all of us. Since the beginning of the millennium, the only country who has tested nuclear weapons is North Korea. These tests were categorically, consistently, and rightfully condemned by the international community and detected by the CTBTO's monitoring stations. Clearly, the universal norm against nuclear testing is in the making. For this process to become irreversible, the CTBT must eventually enter into force, a long overdue step to be taken. It is important that this Article 14 conference consistently underlines this goal. Germany calls on all countries that have yet to sign and or to ratify the CTBT to do so without preconditions or delay. We call on China, the DPRK, on Egypt, on India, on Iran, on Israel, on Pakistan, and on the United States of America to allow the CTBT to eventually enter into force. Pending the treaty's entry into force, let me reiterate Germany's wholehearted support to the CTBTO, an outstanding example of multilateralism in practice, and to its Executive Secretary, Robert Floyd. With its network of more than 300 monitoring stations in 90 countries, the CTBTO ensures that clandestine nuclear testing is no longer an option for any country on this planet. In the decades-long struggle against nuclear testing, the role of civil society can hardly be overrated indeed. Physics and physicians have made us understand better and better the effects of nuclear testing on human life. The Hibakusha, the survivors of the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, remind us of the unspeakable horror that any use of nuclear weapons would wreak. Victims of nuclear testing in different regions of our world, think tanks and NGOs, mayors and parliamentarians have amplified the cause against nuclear testing. My dear friends, it is high time for political leaders to accomplish that mission and to bring the treaty into force. I thank you.
I thank the Minister of State of the Federal Foreign Office of Germany, and now I invite His Excellency Alejandro Solano Ortiz, Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs and Worship of Costa Rica.
Thank you very much, co-presidents rather. Thank you, Executive Secretary. Allow me to congratulate you on your appointments as co-presidents of this conference. aware of the work your ambassadors have done for the preparation of a successful meeting today. I thank you. We also recognise the work of the outgoing co-presidents, Italy and South Africa. We are delighted that since the last Article 14 conference in 2021, Dominica, Equatorial Guinea, the Gambia, Timor-Leste, Tuvalu, Sao Tome and Principe, and the Solomon Islands, as well as in Indonesia, have signed and ratified the treaty, and we hope that Somalia will ratify it too. Costa Rica is delighted that currently 178 states have signed it, ratified it rather, and more have signed and ratified it, including Latin America and the Caribbean. Given the current political context, the worsening of international security, and the continued reference to nuclear weapons in security doctrines and military strategies of nuclear weapon states, today more than ever before are declarations that mean that we need to unite and commit to maintaining our moratoria on nuclear tests. We need to ensure that our commitments ensure the entry into force of the treaty. My delegation urges nuclear weapons states to refrain from conducting any types of experiments, including subcritical ones or simulations by computer, to hone nuclear weapons. These acts thwart our achievement of our ultimate goal and undermine trust in the verification regime. Co-presidents, through our Seismic Station 25 and through our support for capacity building and training activities within the PrEP Commission, my country will continue to contribute to the monitoring regime. The TPNW, the CTBTO, and treaties that establish nuclear weapons-free zones are mutually reinforcing and should be strengthened to guarantee the security and safety of regions, with the ultimate aim of achieving a world free of nuclear weapons. Any test or use of nuclear weapons would bring with it tragic consequences for humankind and our planet. Finally, my delegation wishes to express its delight at the fact that the proposed final declaration of this summit enjoys consensus. We urge states that have signed or ratified the CTBT to spare no efforts to implement the measures it contains as soon as possible to ensure the timely ratification and universalization of the treaty. Yet let us not see this meeting as a simple matter of routine, but rather a unique opportunity to ultimately achieve a safer world and environment for all. Thank you.
I thank the Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs and Worship of Costa Rica, and I now invite His Excellency Tri Tariat, Deputy Minister for Multilateral Affairs of Indonesia, to take the floor.
Excellencies, we gather here today amidst the complex global landscape. The failure of the recent NPT review conference has presented a complex situation that hinders progress in nuclear disarmament. The continued implementation of nuclear deterrence strategies has raised concerns about the commitment towards nuclear disarmament. The CTBT is an important component of the global framework for nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation. However, we have not yet arrived at the point where the full implementation of the treaty can be realized. In this context, I wish to draw attention to three pertinent points. First, we must enhance our collective efforts to ensure the expeditious entry into force of CTBT. This is critical to ensure the universal adherence to CTBT at the earliest opportunity. We therefore encourage the remaining Annex II states to sign and ratify the treaty. A legally enforceable framework is necessary to ensure the treaty's effectiveness in achieving the cessation of nuclear weapons. Second, we must continue to enhance the role of CTBTO in bolstering the verification regime. This is important as preparation for the treaty's eventual treaty entry into force and achieving universal adherence. The continuation of capacity building and training activities to state signatories are of utmost importance. Indonesia benefits from the valuable contributions of 6 seismic auxiliary stations that actively participate in the international monitoring system. These stations play a crucial role in the detection and monitoring of tsunamis, earthquakes, and nuclear accidents, thereby enhancing the overall safety and security of the region. Thirdly, we need to continue raising awareness regarding the significant role of CTBT and multilateral endeavors towards global nuclear disarmament. In this regard, we value engagement with all relevant stakeholders, including civil society organizations, in educating the public about the risk of nuclear testing and promoting the prohibition of such testing. To conclude, Excellencies, Indonesia reaffirms its strong commitment to actively contribute to achieve a world free from nuclear weapons and towards the promotion of the CTBT's entry into force and its universal acceptance. I thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
I thank the Minister for his statement, and I now invite His Excellency Peter Szijjártó, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade of Hungary, to take the floor. You have the floor, Minister.
Thank you so much. Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, thank you so much for including me into the list of speakers. Dear colleagues, unfortunately, we are living in a very fragile security environment. There are armed conflicts taking place in almost 30 countries in the world. And unfortunately, among these 30 countries, there's one in Europe. And this is a very unusual situation for us, putting into consideration the recent decades. And the war in Ukraine is an especially serious threat for the global security, given the fact that one of the stakeholders of this war is a nuclear power, and the other side is being supported by another nuclear power. And I think we do have to do our best efforts, globally speaking, to avoid a direct confrontation between these two nuclear powers. Because if there's a direct confrontation taking place, then it would equal the outbreak of a third world war. And I hope it is a common denominator among all member states in the United Nations that this must be definitely avoided. And we are especially concerned by the fact that in the recent months, open and shameless references have been taken place about nuclear capacities, more shameless than ever. And this is considered by us extremely dangerous. We all know that deployment of nuclear weapons would mean the end of mankind on Earth. And this is a development we definitely don't want to experience. So this current very fragile security situation globally increases a lot the significance of the Test Ban Treaty. And therefore, we want to see the number of nuclear weapons decreasing, and we want to see a total global ban on nuclear tests. That's why Hungary supports, and may I say urges, asks all countries of the world to sign and ratify this treaty. And we together have to make sure that this treaty is fully and entirely respected. Of course, we value the fact that since 1996, no tests have taken place, with an exception of one country. But still, it would be much more comfortable for all of us if a legal guarantee was there. We still are very concerned about the nuclear tests carried out by North Korea, and we stick to our position that the whole Korean peninsula should be free from nuclear weapons. We Hungarians have been doing and will be doing our best in order to make the application of the treaty comprehensive and universal. I'd like to express our appreciation for our Italian and South African friends for their work as coordinators, and wish all the best of luck for Norway and Panama to be successful in the upcoming period of time. And I'd like to announce, Madam Chair and Mr. Chair, that Hungary is ready to take the responsibility of the leadership between 2025 and 27 to make sure that more countries would join and ratify the treaty. And finally, I'd like to express the significance we attach to the existence of the international monitoring system, which has proved its usefulness and which has proved that it's absolutely necessary to continue to operate. Therefore, we are committed to continue the cooperation in this regard as well. I really do appreciate your kindness that I could take the floor, and thank you so much for your kind attention.
I thank the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade of Hungary for his statement and the offer to take up the responsibility under this treaty. I now give the floor to His Excellency Gregor Köstler, Vice Minister for Political Affairs and Political Director of Austria. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Let me start by thanking both Italy and South Africa and Panama and Norway for their crucial roles in bringing progress to this conference. Let me start by clearly emphasizing that Austria aligns herself with the statement of the European Union as a proud EU member state. But as we speak, Russia, a permanent member of the UN Security Council, is still waging its brutal war of aggression against Ukraine. We condemn categorically Russia's clear violations of international law and international humanitarian law in this context. Excellencies, Russia has coupled this war of aggression with repeated nuclear threats that are unacceptable. In fact, nuclear threats are in fact threats against all of us, because the catastrophic humanitarian consequences of nuclear weapons know no borders. Therefore, we as Austrians will consistently stand up against any weakening of the nuclear taboo, of the nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation regime. I commend, in this context of nuclear threats, I commend particularly the G20 and its previous chairmanship, Indonesia, and the Indian chairmanship, for actually bringing about a very, very important language about the unacceptability of nuclear threats in this context. We believe that this made a huge difference. I want to emphasize that we're deeply concerned about the increasing likelihood of a new nuclear test. As we learn more and more about the inherent risks and the catastrophic complex consequences for humanity and the environment, it is deeply worrying that some states still debate potential future nuclear explosions with devastating environmental and humanitarian consequences. The more we learn about the horrendous and downplayed effects of nuclear weapons use and testing, the more we owe it, as Germany has pointed out as well, to the survivors of previous nuclear explosions to act and do everything in our power to stop nuclear testing once and for all. We're therefore particularly alarmed by the DPRK's unlawful activities, which undermine the global nuclear non-proliferation regime and pose a serious threat to international peace and security. We appeal to the DPRK to return to diplomacy and achieve the complete, verifiable, irreversible denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. There is no alternative, and the CTBTO can play an important part in supporting this process. Austria welcomes the important progress made towards the universalization of the treaty and recognizes the importance of the CTBT's ratification by Somalia, Dominica, Equatorial Guinea, Gambia, Timor-Leste, Tuvalu, Sao Tome and Principe, the Solomon Islands and Sri Lanka since the 2021 conference on facilitating the entry into force of the CTBT. Thank you to all of you who have taken this important step. We congratulate also CTBTO's Executive Secretary, Dr. Robert Floyd, and his team for their tireless and effective work to achieve more signatures and ratifications to the treaty, and we pledge as Austrians to continue to support you in these efforts. The Science and Technology Conference in June 2023, ladies and gentlemen, in Vienna, our capital, was an impressive success, bringing together over 2,000 scientists, academics and policymakers. It once again highlighted the invaluable role of the CTBTO and its international monitoring system in providing crucial data to ensure that no nuclear explosion goes undetected, but also provides an important forum to pool and exchange relevant scientific knowledge and developments. Dear fellow delegates, we cannot afford to wait another decade for the CTBT to enter into force. It is high time that all remaining Annex II states ratify the CTBT without further delay or precondition. In the meantime, many non-nuclear weapons states are doing their part to support the global disarmament non-proliferation regime by adopting, signing, and ratifying the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, the TPNW. And thank you to my follow-on speaker for having done so quite recently. I want to emphasize that as both the TPNW, the TPNW is fully compatible with the CTBT, and several states have signed both treaties to send a strong signal towards the ultimate goal of banning all nuclear explosions. In this context, I draw your attention to the comprehensive overview of new peer review scientific studies conducted over the last 15 years on the inherent risks and consequences of nuclear weapons, published by the University of York and sponsored by Austria. Esteemed chairs, Austria will continue its strong push for the CTBT to finally enter into force. It is high time that all states ratify the treaty so that we can close the door on nuclear testing once and for all. Thank you very much.
I thank the Vice Minister from Austria for his statement, and I now give the floor to Mrs. Aruni Vijayawardene, the Secretary of Foreign Affairs from Sri Lanka. You have the floor, ma'am.
Distinguished co-presidents from Panama and Norway, Honorable Minister, Executive Secretary Dr. Floyd, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me at the outset congratulate Norway and Panama on assuming the presidency of the 13th Conference on Facilitating the Entry into Force of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. Let me also thank Italy and South Africa for their excellent work as previous Article 14 coordinators and the untiring efforts of Dr. Floyd and the CTBTO team in promoting the entry into force of the treaty. Consistent with our long-standing support for nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation, Sri Lanka ratified the CTBT in July this year. We do acknowledge that our treaty ratification process has been overdue. Sri Lanka was amongst the early first signatories of the CTBT in October 1996, just days after the treaty was open for signature. We are glad that we were able to complete the ratification process this year, further reinforcing our commitment to the objectives of the treaty and an end to nuclear testing, leading to a nuclear weapons-free world. Sri Lanka has been contributing to the development of the treaty's objectives. Sri Lanka hosts, since the year 2000, an auxiliary seismological station, which is part of the treaty's international monitoring system. We have also actively supported the work of the CTBT's on-site inspection through regular nomination of national experts to attend training programs and expert meetings, and hosting CTBT activities within the scope of the treaty. Sri Lanka is pleased to have been selected to host the next on-site inspection integrated field exercise in 2025, which will bring together more than 180 technical experts and other participants from around the world. Sri Lanka will be the first South Asian country to host such a large-scale exercise, while being the second country in Asia to do so. It will serve as a significant opportunity for improvement of the on-site inspection capabilities of the CTBTO and identify opportunities for further improvement. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, in the current context of the rapidly deteriorating international security architecture, Sri Lanka identifies the significance and the increasing relevance of the normative value of the CTBT. We acknowledge the important achievements of the CTBT on its journey so far since its adoption 26 years ago, which includes the creation of a strong global norm against nuclear testing, its role as a solid confidence and security building measure, establishment of a global monitoring system, as well as the benefits of an international data center for scientific advancements of mankind. Despite these achievements of the CTBT and the progressive development of its verification regime, we remain deeply concerned of the prolonged delay in its entry into force. For effective pursuit of nuclear non-proliferation, the early entry into force of the CTBT should not only be a priority, but an absolute necessity, as it could be the first concrete step towards breaking the current stalemate on nuclear disarmament issues. We also wish to highlight that the progress in non-proliferation and disarmament of nuclear weapons should go parallel to the expansion of international cooperation in peaceful uses of nuclear energy. While a moratorium on nuclear weapons testing is certainly a measure that is in the interest of our collective security, it is not a substitute for an internationally legally binding treaty against testing. The non-testing norm cannot be taken for granted, and over time, it must be actively renewed and reinforced. Given our collective failure to adopt a consensus outcome document for the second consecutive time at the 10th NPT Review Conference last year, bringing the CTBT into full legal standing is compelling. In closing, we join the call of other states parties in urging those states yet to ratify the CTBT, particularly those states whose ratification is required for the treaty's entry into force, to do so. May I also say that Sri Lanka yesterday acceded to the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. We commend the extensive efforts of the Executive Secretary, Dr. Floyd, for his already successful and incremental efforts in increasing the number of ratifications to the treaty. I understand that since the last Article 14 conference, 8 states have ratified and 1 has signed, which is great progress. A nuclear weapons-free world remains our ultimate goal, and the CTBT plays a fundamental part in this process. Thank you. Thank you.
I congratulate Sri Lanka on the recent ratification, and I thank the Secretary of Foreign Affairs of Sri Lanka for her statement. I now give the floor to Mr. Andres Vilumsons, Undersecretary of State, Political Director of Latvia. You have the floor.
Distinguished co-presidents, Latvia would like to congratulate Norway and Panama on the assumption of the presidency of this conference, and thank the outgoing presidency of Italy and South Africa. I express Latvia's gratitude to the UN Secretary General for convening this conference, and to the CTBTO Secretariat for their work in these challenging times. Latvia fully aligns with the statement of the EU and wants to deliver these remarks in national capacity. In the increasingly volatile international security environment of today, the CTBT serves as an indispensable instrument to prevent the further development and proliferation of nuclear weapons. The treaty's entry into force is both political necessity and a tangible step towards enhancing global peace and stability. We welcome the ratification of CTBT since the 2021 conference by 8 additional states, noting the important progress towards the universalization. Latvia recognizes the uniqueness of CTBT as an important element of the global non-proliferation architecture, and also as a practical tool which embodies effective and widely respected verification regime and international monitoring system. CTBTO does provide comprehensive and reliable data that strengthen the global non-proliferation and disarmament regime and gives the international community an invaluable resource and confidence by ensuring that no nuclear test goes unnoticed. Thereof, tests previously conducted by DPRK are staunch reminders of the necessity of accelerating the CTBT's implementation. Latvia reiterates its strong call to the DPRK to sign and ratify the CTBT without delay and abide by its provisions. Excellencies, today the responsible and cooperative approach to global security matters has reached an ever higher importance. Therefore, we urge the remaining states, particularly the Annex II countries, to ratify the treaty. Unfortunately, since the conference of 2021, there has been no tangible progress towards the ratification of the CTBT by nuclear weapon states. Voluntary national moratoriums are important, but they cannot replace a legal and universal treaty. This is our opportunity to genuinely shape the international security and bring us closer to our ultimate goal of worlds without nuclear weapons. I would like to conclude by reiterating Latvia's continued support to the CTBT as an important instrument for providing peace and security for all. Thank you.
I thank the Secretary of State from Latvia for his statement. And I would like to state, distinguished delegates, that as previously announced, the list of speakers is now closed for inscription as it is past 12 o'clock. So then we continue with the list of speakers, and I would now like to give the floor to His Excellency Alex Betzig, Secretary General for Foreign Policy of Chile. You have the floor.
Buenos días.
A good afternoon to you all. Madam Co-President, Chile is and has always been a staunch supporter and advocate of general and complete disarmament. We prioritize broad, transparent and democratic multilateral debate on the issue. At a juncture for the international community which is particularly complex and characterized inter alia by the Russian aggression against Ukraine, the fear of military escalation, the threat of use of nuclear weapons, and the conduct of ballistic missile tests by the DPRK, I wish to reiterate Chile's full commitment to disarmament, the non-proliferation of nuclear weapons, and the peaceful resolution of disputes. We adhere to the principle of the indivisibility of international security because all states, regardless of size or power, have the responsibility to contribute to the consolidation of an international order based on cooperation and governed by international law. We are of the firm conviction that the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty and the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons are cornerstones of the international disarmament and non-proliferation architecture. Both agreements support, complement and strengthen, together with the treaties which establish nuclear weapons-free zones, such as the Tlatelolco Treaty, they constitute the cornerstone that we all see in the NPT. As Chile stated during the first preparatory committee for the 11th Review Conference of the Parties to the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, and as we've stated in various multilateral fora, we here reiterate the need for the timely entry into force of the CTBT. Moreover, we urge those individual states in Annex II to expedite the process of signing and or ratifying this international instrument. Mr. President, Chile attaches the utmost importance to the technical work undertaken by this organization. Proof of that fact are the 8 monitoring stations which are located on Chilean territory. We underscore the vital importance of the 3 programs which make up the verification regime. In other words, the International Data Center, in situ inspections, and the International Monitoring System. We believe that the Science and Technology Conference of 2023 was a crucial step forward and a crucial opportunity to underscore the contributions and future contributions to be made by the verification regime of the CTBT, specifically the contributions it does and will make to the international community. We reiterate the fact that it is important for signatory states to receive statistics disaggregated by gender and region from participants in the trainings provided. In terms of initiatives related to the promotion of the participation of women in the profession, we note with satisfaction the mentoring program that is in line with the government of Chile's efforts to implement a feminist foreign policy. Finally, we wish to particularly underscore the work undertaken jointly by my country and the Provisional Technical Secretariat. That work has allowed the visit of Dr. Robert Floyd to Chile in June. That visit made it possible to underscore the laudable work undertaken by the PrepCom and its subsidiary bodies to Chilean authorities, academics and civil society. There is no doubt that that visit of Dr. Robert Floyd was an opportunity to reiterate Chile's commitment to disarmament, non-proliferation and international security. Thank you.
I thank the Secretary General for Foreign Affairs for Foreign Policy of Chile for his statement. And I now invite His Excellency Sergei Vershinin, Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation, to take the floor.
Спасибо.
Thank you very much, Madam Co-President. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we consider that this conference will fully be in line with the tasks listed under Article 14 of the CTBT and will allow us to move forward in facilitating this document's entry into force. It is an extremely important document for nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation. However, unfortunately, we must note that this conference is giving us a sort of confused view, because we see that the situation currently is in a dead end when it comes to the treaty coming into force. The fact of the matter is, this is our 13th large conference, and this bears witness that the CTBT coming into force as an international instrument is something that remains clouded. Allow me to recall the history of this document. In 1996, the CTBT was opened to signatory, but more than 25 years later, it has yet to enter into force because the remaining 8 countries have yet to sign it. Enormous work was done to universalize the CTBT in 1996. At this time, 188 countries have signed it, and 178 have ratified it. This is proof of how important the preparatory committee is. In the past year, 8 countries have signed the CTBT. This is a significant contribution to this international document. However, the last time that an Article 2 signed, it was in Indonesia many, many years ago. And since then, no progress has been made. The clearly destabilizing element here was the 2017 refusal to sign the agreement. This is something that many of their allies and for the United States, they have stated that it's changed nothing, but it had very destructive impact on the CTBT and the international security situation as a whole. The ratification of this treaty is something that must be carried out to ensure that all infrastructure is implemented appropriately, including the international monitoring system, which is part of the verification system. Instead of showing their will through actions, the United States is trying to slander other countries, including the Russian Federation, and they're doing this simply by stating these accusations without any sort of facts to back it up. There is no moral or ethical reason to discuss the commitment to the treaty by other states if a state has not signed the treaty. The United States could indeed be the driver for the CTBT to enter into force as an international instrument, and their ratification would be a significant step forward. We call on the United States government to take all necessary steps to ratify the CTBT. We also wish to address the other 7 countries upon whom we are dependent for the entry into force of the treaty. We call on them to ratify as quickly as possible. Each of these countries bears their own responsibility for the entry into force of this treaty. The Russian Federation is strictly following its obligations under this treaty. It was one of the first to sign it and ratified it in the year 2000, and since then has been strictly aligned with its provisions, even though it has not entered into force, but it is also worked to universalize the document by in negotiation with other countries. We are currently carrying out one of the largest sections of the IMS. We have 31 stations that have been put into in operation, and we plan to finish this work this year. As a whole, we support our work and cooperation with Dr. Floyd, the Executive Secretary. Russia declared a voluntary national moratoria and has maintained it since that day. It would be logical for other nuclear weapon states to do the same. We wish to note that the voluntary national moratoria on nuclear explosions cannot compensate for the most important task before us, that of the entry into force of the document, and bilateral measures will not replace those that would be taken on under the treaty. We are pleased to note the measures that were listed in the declaration that we adopted during this conference, and we will do our best to assist in their being brought into action. Thank you.
I thank the Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation for his statement. I now invite His Excellency Joel Hernandez Garcia, Vice Minister for Multilateral Affairs and Human Rights of Mexico, to take the floor.
Good afternoon.
Señoras
Co-Presidents, allow me to congratulate you on your election to steer this important conference. On behalf of Mexico, I express our thanks to your delegations for their leadership, Norway and Panama. Thank you for your leadership of the preparatory work. Co-Presidents, distinguished delegates, this conference is being held against a backdrop of ratcheting up of rhetoric regarding the use of nuclear weapons and against a backdrop of investments into arms. That investment has recently stepped up, and references have been made to possible new nuclear tests and the development and modernization of a systems of delivery. Soon will mark 3 decades since the opening for signatory of the CTBT. The CTBT was a milestone. It halted acts that for decades had become normalized. The detonation of more than 2,000 nuclear weapons. Many of those were around the north border of my country in air, land and sea, with the devastating consequences that had for the environment, health, well-beings and very lives of communities and individuals. These weapons had particularly adverse effects for women, children and indigenous peoples. We hail the ratification by the Solomon Islands, Somalia and Sri Lanka this year of the treaty that gives hope for the universalization thereof. However, we are saddened by the fact that the treaty has yet to enter into force. Despite the growing nuclear risk that prevails, we haven't seen tangible progress made towards the ratification of the treaty by states whose ratification is crucial for the entry into force of the CTBT. It would even appear that there is growing indifference towards the status quo of having incomplete norms in terms of the prohibition on nuclear tests. Consequently, we once again appeal to the 8 states whose signature or ratifications are necessary for the entry into force of the CTBT to do what they need to do. That needs to enter into force without further delay if we are to eradicate once and for all the possibility of once again suffering the consequences of nuclear tests. As is stated in the action plan of the 2010 NPT Review Conference, the ratification of the treaty by nuclear weapon states that haven't yet ratified it would be an act whose scope and positive impact cannot be underestimated. This is particularly true against the current geopolitical backdrop. We, however, welcome the fact that through provisional implementation of it, we've seen the effective instrumentalization of the monitoring system, and we are delighted that some states have a moratorium on explosive tests, and that is vital given the moral and political weight of the treaty. The development, more than 90% of the network provided for under the international monitoring system is in place, and that is crucial to detect all of the tests undertaken in the 21st century. These are tests that have been quite rightly condemned. The verification regime of the CTBT has reached a level of sophistication and coverage which surpasses expectations of scientists that participated in the technical negotiations leading thereto. Today, that system has important civilian and scientific applications, particularly when it comes to the detection and prevention of natural disasters and to the fight against climate change. We widely recognize the professional work and leadership of the Executive Secretary, Robert Floyd, and we recognize the work of those working within the international monitoring system. We particularly recognize Dr. Perez Campos, my compatriot, and we recognize the whole team working within the PTS. Co-presidents, before the CTBT became a legal imperative, Mexico placed it on the multilateral disarmament and non-proliferation agenda. The CTBT is the first explicit prohibition contained in the Tlatelolco Treaty, and my country kept this as a priority of review processes related to the NPT, even when doing so came at a high political cost. However, and consequently, and in line with the Mexican foreign policy and its tenets, my country commits to stepping up its multilateral endeavors to promote the entry into force of our treaty. We will do that as a depository of the Tlatelolco Treaty. As president of the second meeting of states parties to the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, that will be held on the 27th of November, and will also do that throughout the 11th review cycle of the NPT that is the cornerstone of the disarmament and non-proliferation regime. We are heartened by the commitments of Latin American and Caribbean states. Ours is a region that who, in spite having a legally binding ban on nuclear weapons, universally acceded to the CTBT as a region long ago. We also welcome the fact that all states parties and signatories of the TPNW are also states parties to the CTBT. We congratulate Cuba, Comoros, Dominica, the Gambia, Equatorial Guinea, Sao Tome and Principe, Timor-Leste and Tuvalu, 8 of the 11 states that ratified the treaty and have done since the entry into force of the TPNW in 2021, that those acts made clear that both treaties are mutually reinforcing and complementary. The international community's feeling is clear regarding the urgent need for the CTBT to be signed without delay, without any conditions attached, so that then it can enter into force as soon as possible. That is clearly stated in the thematic resolution that we jointly present with Australia and New Zealand every year in the first committee of the General Assembly. As we wait for the entry into force of the CTBT, my country reiterates the need to ensure that all states, without any exception, refrain from conducting nuclear tests or other nuclear explosions, or indeed any other type of non-explosive test which is relevant, including subcritical experiments and those undertaken by supercomputers or via any other technology to hone nuclear weapons. We believe that because that is the very spirit of the CTBT, we are ready and willing and politically committed to achieving the entry into force of the CTBT and to establishing it as a legally binding norm. And there is an ethical and moral imperative indeed to prohibit all nuclear tests. Thank you.
I thank the Vice Minister for Multilateral Affairs and Human Rights of Mexico. And I invite His Excellency His Excellency Tariq, Lord Ahmad of Wimbledon, of the United Kingdom of Great Britain, Northern Ireland, Minister of State for Middle East, North Africa, South Asia, and United Nations, to take the floor.
Well, thank you, and let me begin by congratulating the Treaty Organization for 25 years of incredible and quite tireless work, which, as we look across the world today, is as important as ever, with Russia's illegal war on Ukraine and its irresponsible nuclear rhetoric. This particular treaty, not only do you deliver a comprehensive regime against test explosions, but your monitoring systems save lives from natural disasters. Dr. Floyd, thank you. Thank you to you and your team for the incredible work you've done. And I stand proud that the United Kingdom was there at the start, and a quarter of a century on, we are here today. Let me assure you, Dr. Floyd, indeed, all members here, that you have the United Kingdom's wholehearted support, which is why we provide £4.5 million a year in technical and scientific assistance and host 12 international monitoring stations. When we look around the world as it is today in 2023, I'm sure all of us would agree, whatever our perspectives or views, but we can agree on this, that this treaty is ever more relevant, ever more important in the fragility that surrounds us. It's surely our collective, joint, collaborative responsibility to promote its entry into force. To advance peace and security is a noble cause. It improves trust, it improves confidence among states, and ultimately, future disarmament across the world. Yet creating that environment for nuclear disarmament requires incremental steps. We cannot, it's been said before, and it's been said again, time and time again during this UN General Assembly high-level session, that we cannot ignore Russia's illegal war on Ukraine. But what is worse, it is irresponsible nuclear rhetoric. You know, my wife and I, we have 3 children. When they hear that rhetoric, when a 9-year-old hears the rhetoric of nuclear use, just the threat of it, what does it conjure in that child's mind? I was growing up with that. We hoped this was all in the history books. Sadly, nay, tragically, it is not. And first and foremost, I say to Russia, words matter, rhetoric matters. It's illogical. It's astonishing, nay, it's absolutely insane to threaten such rhetoric in the world of 2023. Therefore, we cannot ignore at any time that during this organization's existence, there are states who continue to go down that path. The DPRK, North Korea, has conducted 6 nuclear tests and prepared for a 7th. We therefore call on North Korea, abandon your illegal nuclear program now, and do so in a complete, verifiable, irreversible manner. Resume dialogue, and ultimately sign and ratify the treaty. And yes, we do call on all member states to respond robustly should they conduct a further test. It threatens not just the neighboring countries, not just a region, it threatens us all. And despite these challenges, let me assure you of this. We continue to take steps forward. We, the United Kingdom, and I welcome the 8 ratifications since the last conference. But our work is not done. Until the treaty enters into force, we need to come together to call on all states to declare and indeed reaffirm, that's vital nowadays, reaffirm moratoriums on nuclear weapons and test explosions. And to those countries in Annex 2, the Annex 2 states, I call upon them to sign or ratify the treaty as soon as possible. The question's often asked, why? Well, there's a simple response. It takes us ever closer to achieving our vision of a world without nuclear weapons. We need together to provide that collective security today for our sakes and for generations to come. Thank you so much.
I thank the Minister of State from the United Kingdom of Great Britain. And I now give the floor to His Excellency Muhammad Ziauddin, Minister, Prime Minister Office of Bangladesh.
Distinguished co-presidents, Excellencies, distinguished guests, Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty was humanity's first silver lining towards a comprehensive and verifiable non-proliferation regime banning all nuclear explosions. Bangladesh, as Annex II state, had demonstrated its full faith in the CTBT and was the first country from South Asia to have signed the treaty in 1996 and ratified it in 2000. Bangladesh is bound by our constitutional obligation to advocate for a total elimination of nuclear weapons. We firmly believe that nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation is essential for maintaining international peace and security. As state party to the CTBTO, Bangladesh attaches great importance to the international efforts aimed at nuclear non-proliferation and total elimination of weapons of mass destruction. Bangladesh, therefore, continues to remain a staunch advocate of immediate entry into force of the CTBT. We join the powerful voice of 178 ratifying state parties in urging all countries which have not yet signed and 18 countries which have not yet ratified the CTBT to do so without further delay. Humanity is faced with complex and compounding crises. Indeed, potential of nuclear war cannot be ruled out, as we witness extreme polarization and isolation. It has therefore become more compelling to promote early entry into force of CTBT. We call upon all states to abide by the obligations of the treaty, even though it is yet to enter into force. At the same time, we renew our appeal to those who have not signed and ratified the treaty to do so without any conditions and delay. It is our sincere hope that they would make every effort for early entry into force of the CTBT. Bangladesh reaffirms its steadfast commitment and support for the objectives of the CTBT, as well as the initiatives to reinvigorate the processes to get the treaty to enter into force. I thank you for your patience and kind attention. Thank you.
I thank the Minister from the Prime Minister's Office of Bangladesh for his statement. I now invite Ms. Kilike Silaste Elling, Under Secretary of the Political Affairs of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Estonia, to take the floor.
Distinguished co-presidents, Executive Secretary, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to begin by stating that Estonia fully aligns itself with the statement of the European Union. In addition, I would like to make some comments in my national capacity. The United Nations General Assembly adopted the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty on the 10th of September 1996. 27 years later, 187 states have signed the treaty, and 178 states have ratified it. However, there are still 8 Annex II states remaining whose ratifications are needed for the treaty to come into effect. Estonia supports all international efforts towards the entry into force of the CTBT and urges all states, particularly the Annex II states, to sign and ratify the treaty without further delay. The entry into force of the treaty is in all of our interest. The CTBT is a key pillar of our collective security and an indispensable multilateral instrument to advance towards nuclear disarmament and prevent the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. Nuclear weapon tests, explosions, and any other nuclear explosions represent a serious threat to international peace and security and undermine the global nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation regime. We express our grave concern over Russia's announcement of its readiness to conduct nuclear tests, which is inconsistent with its signing and ratification of the CTBT and risks undermining confidence in it. We call on all states to abide by a moratorium on nuclear weapon test explosions or any other nuclear explosions, and to refrain from action that would undermine the objectives of the treaty. Even though the CTBT is yet to enter into force, it is already a success story. Its verification regime and the effective work of the international monitoring system make sure that no nuclear explosion goes undetected, enabling the international community to respond appropriately and deter non-compliance. Thank you.
I thank the Undersecretary of State from Estonia for her statement, and now invite Her Excellency Bonnie Jenkins, Undersecretary of State for Arms Control and International Security of the United States, to take the floor.
Secretary General, distinguished co-presidents, Executive Secretary Floyd, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for convening this important meeting today. I am proud to address this conference and note that the United States believes strongly in the Article 14 process and its effectiveness in highlighting the important benefits that would accrue to all states from the entry into force of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. The most vital of these benefits would be the establishment of a global, legally binding ban on nuclear explosive tests anywhere, anytime, in all environments. Such a ban is a key step on the path to a world without nuclear weapons. President Biden has reaffirmed the U.S. commitment to work towards such a world, informed both by our national security interests and the potential humanitarian impacts of the use of nuclear weapons. As most of you know, President Biden has been a long-time supporter of the CTBT. As president, he has been very equally clear that the United States supports the CTBT and is firmly committed to work to achieve its entry into force. We recognize the significant challenges that lie ahead in reaching this goal. Challenges that include securing ratification by all of the remaining Annex II states, some of whom have not signed the treaty, and this is no easy task. All Annex II states should sign and/or ratify the treaty without waiting for others to do so. I want to reiterate that in line with the goals of the CTBT, the United States continues to observe its zero-yield nuclear explosive testing moratorium and calls on all states possessing nuclear weapons to immediately declare or maintain such a moratorium. Maintaining the international norm against nuclear explosive testing remains in the United States' interest and in the interest of all states. Our ability to monitor for and detect nuclear explosive tests is also stronger than it has ever been. The international monitoring system is nearly complete and provides all state signatories with access to a technically advanced global network of sensors that can detect even relatively low-yield nuclear explosions in any environment on Earth. It is vitally important for all signatory states to help complete this system and provide for its long-term sustainment. Unfortunately, just paying signatory states' current assessments is no longer sufficient to sustain the IMS. After more than a quarter century of continuous provisional operations, many of the technologies and equipment that are part of the IMS are reaching the end of their design lives. In addition, many of the manufacturers of this equipment are no longer producing it, which will drive a significant increase in costs to recapitalize the network. This will require a rebaselining of the CTBTO Preparatory Commission's budget and the commitment of state signatories to provide sufficient resources to make this new budget a reality. In a statement released following conclusion of the G7 leaders' May summit in Hiroshima, President Biden, along with the other G7 leaders, reaffirmed the G7's commitment to provide sufficient resources to ensure the continued operation and long-term sustainability of all elements of the CTBT verification system, and called on other states to do the same. The IMS, along with the International Data Center and the on-site inspection capability that is under development, comprise a formidable regime for the detection and analysis of nuclear explosions, and thus, ultimately, the verification of compliance with the treaty once it enters into force. This fact has been repeatedly made clear as the IMS successfully detected and reported all 6 nuclear explosive tests conducted by the DPRK since 2006. Finally, Excellencies, the CTBT is not an abstract concept for a theoretical world. It is a firm and certain step towards peace, toward reason, and toward security of our own citizens and all the peoples of the world. It is an equally concrete step in the eyes of the people who have been directly impacted by nuclear tests in the past, providing hope for a future where such tests will no longer occur again. The United States has recognized the effects of its past nuclear explosive testing program and has accepted and acted on its responsibility. We have provided assistance to people, communities, and environments affected by historic nuclear explosive testing, including through the settlement of claims. There are many challenges between us and entry into force, and it will require focus and effort by all of us to overcome these challenges. Working together, we can overcome the challenges we face and end nuclear explosive testing once and for all. Thank you very much.
I thank the Undersecretary of State from the United States of America. And now I invite His Excellency Samir Bogar from Slovenia, State Secretary, Ministry of Foreign and European Affairs, to take the floor.
Thank you. Distinguished Presidents, Executive Secretary, Ministers, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Slovenia aligns with the statement that will be presented by the European Union later on, but I want to make a few comments in my national capacity. So first, for Slovenia, the CTBT remains one of the key elements of the international disarmament and non-proliferation architecture. It is a key stepstone toward free of nuclear weapons. That's why I would like at the very start to welcome the ratification, or the most recent ratification by Sri Lanka and signature by Somalia. Given the deterioration of the global security situation, or the rupture of the global system as described by Secretary General, it is more than ever vital to ensure prompt entry into force of the treaty. In the east of Europe, the aggression of Russia, the nuclear state, against its neighbor Ukraine is shaking the security of our region. Threats to use nuclear weapons and the announcements of Russia's readiness to conduct nuclear tests increases the concerns and is shattering security situation across Europe. In Asia, illegal and provocative missile tests by the DPRK raise tension and endanger safety. Expectation of further underground nuclear tests by North Korea are of utmost concern. Against the backdrop of increasing international strain on the non-proliferation and disarmament architecture, all state signatories must contribute to preventing further erosion of the international system based on the UN Charter and international law. We must complete the task of our predecessor by facilitating the treaty's entry into force, effective implementation of it, making it universal, and strengthening the existing moratoria on nuclear text explosions. Slovenia, as an incoming member of the UN Security Council, is fully committed to upholding and enhancing the universality and effective implementation of the treaties and conventions in disarmament and non-proliferation field. The CTBT certainly presents a prominent case for the importance of multilateralism. The Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organization has provided the international community with something no single country could accomplish itself. It has established a truly global, state-of-the-art monitoring system which not only detects nuclear explosions, but can be used for civil and scientific purposes as well. Before concluding, I want to commend the efforts of the Executive Secretary and Secretariat to achieve gender equality within the organization. Women and girls, as catalysts for progress, will play a significant role in driving CTBT forward. Thank you.
I thank the State Secretary from Slovenia for his statement. I now invite His Excellency Savan K. and the Secretary of State, Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of the Kingdom of Cambodia to take the floor.
Madam President, our conference today is critically important for effective and practical measures in our pursuit of a world free from nuclear weapon tests and the promotion of entry into force of the CTBT. We are now living in the most uncertain time as international order has undergone fundamental transformation as the result of a balance of power shift and a sharpened strategy rivalry between major powers, and the decline of multilateralism. At a time when the nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament regime seem to be eroding, the treaty is one of the few bright spots on which there is nuclear universal agreement, and we all are responsible for preserving international peace and security under any circumstances. Cambodia fully supports the entry into force of the CTBT, which will serve as a legally binding instrument to prevent any nuclear weapon test explosion or any nuclear explosion anywhere in the world through its strict monitoring, verification, and compliance. This will work to protect the safety of people from the harmful aftermath of nuclear testing and the serious consequence on people's health, livelihood, and environment. In this sense, Cambodia calls on all states, particularly those states listed in Annex 2 of the treaty, to sign and ratify CTBT so it could finally enter into force without further delay. Cambodia reaffirmed its unwavering commitment and support for the CTBT and welcomed the successful adoption of the declaration and measures to promote the entry into force of this important treaty. Together, we gather as the nation of the world, and together we can stand up to our responsibility and make the world a safer place to live. In conclusion, all those Open Hemia's legacy was to put an end to the World War II. The global community continues to deal with its impacts today. As a global community, we have shared responsibility to ensure that our planet is safe from the threat of nuclear weapons. It is my country's hope that all states disarm nuclear weapons so that to ensure that our generation live in peace, safe, and prosperous world. I thank you.
I thank the Undersecretary of State from Cambodia. I now invite His Excellency Gisela Dop, Acting Director General for Multilateral Affairs and Globalization from Belgium, to take the floor.
Co-Presidents, members of the Secretariat, dear colleagues. Belgium fully supports the statement made by the various representatives of the European Union that have preceded me, and I would like to add the following remarks in my national capacity. May I start by congratulating the outgoing co-presidents, Italy and South Africa, as well as you, the current co-presidents, and express warmest wishes for the success of your mission. My country is equally grateful for the strong leadership shown by Executive Secretary Dr. Floyd and by his whole team in defending the interests of the organization. Belgium has, a few years ago, been a co-facilitator together with Iraq for the Article 14 process. My country is pleased that thanks to the tireless efforts of all co-facilitators and of the Executive Secretariat, several member states, as we have heard, have recently decided to ratify the CTBT. These ratifications are important signals of confidence in the treaty and in the multilateral process as a whole. And these signals of confidence are all the more encouraging because the treaty itself carries important normative significance, as was pointed out by my distinguished colleague from Sri Lanka, by the way. A full and definitive ban on testing, verified by a legitimate multilateral body, is a key requisite for peace and security and for the international non-proliferation regime. Colleagues, as several of the preceding speakers have pointed out, and as we all know, the current climate of polarization, which overshadows so much of our multilateral work, is also hampering the attainment of these key objectives, peace, security, and international non-proliferation. Another worrying development, which requires our full and constant attention, is the self-declared policy by one country, the DPRK, not to feel bound by a moratorium on nuclear weapon testing. Us, the international community, has a clear responsibility to remind this country of its obligations, and our conference today is the fitting occasion to do so. The CTBTO has always taken full responsibility for monitoring any signs of testing wherever they take place in the world. My country is grateful to the Executive Secretary and his staff for their efforts to ensure fully operational status of the international monitoring system. And the IMS, as was pointed out by Dr. Floyd earlier, not only fulfills the function required by the treaty, but it also greatly benefits the environmental and climate and scientific activities of member states. Let me finish, colleagues, by voicing the strongest possible support of my country for that which brings us together here today in New York, to appeal to those states who have not yet ratified the treaty or signed it to do so without delay, and to join forces in strengthening the effectiveness of our treaty obligations and of the CTBTO as a whole. Thank you for your attention.
I thank the Director General from Belgium for his statement. And the last speaker on my list for this meeting is Mr. Sebastian Mitrace, Political Director, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Romania.
Your Excellencies, Co-Presidents, distinguished delegates, first of all, I would like to thank the co-presidents, Panama and Norway, for convening this Article 14 conference and to assure them on our full support. Many thanks as well to Dr. Floyd and to his team for the tremendous work. While Romania fully associates itself with the statement delivered on behalf of the European Union, I would like to make some remarks in the national capacity. Romania strongly believes that the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty is an essential pillar of the international security architecture, and this event is an opportunity for state parties to renew their commitment to the treaty. Therefore, we support its entry into force and encourage states that have not yet signed to ratify the treaty to do this. Distinguished delegates, today's conference takes place in a fundamentally already altered security environment marked by the increased tension and new global challenges and threats. Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine, including nuclear threats, undermined the very foundation of international relations and the rules-based international order. Despite the complex geopolitical context, the CTBTO continues to bring a remarkable contribution through the increased number of monitoring systems comprised of 321 certified stations and 16 laboratories. Having established such a network and data processing infrastructure at an unprecedented scale will pose challenges to states which might try to conduct a clandestine test and hope to evade detection. For its part, Romania will continue to provide all the political and technical support required in order to enable the Preparatory Commission to complete its task related to the progressive development of the coverage of the international monitoring system. In this regard, we would like to highlight our participation in the auxiliary seismic monitoring system network and of the IMS with a seismic station. We are grateful for the Commission's constant involvement in the promotion of the national data centers, understanding the way in which the system of NDC is functioning through courses and similar events is the first step towards improving capabilities, and this should be seen as a priority. Co-Presidents, we remain strongly committed to the CTBT objectives. From this perspective, we welcome CTBT achievement almost universal adherence. We welcome Romania welcome and congratulates Solomon Islands and Sri Lanka as the newest ratifying states. We are convinced that the treaty's entry into force is an essential pillar towards a safer and more powerful and peaceful world. We continue to stand fully behind this objective. We remain deeply concerned about the threat of 7th nuclear tests being conducted by the DPRK, the only state to have conducted nuclear tests in the 21st century. As such, we call on the DPRK to refrain from such actions, as well as to return to the full compliance with international law and sign and ratify the CTBT. The entry into force of the CTBT is directly linked to our efforts in maintaining this goal high on the international political agenda. In the current geopolitical context, the threat of nuclear tests will not cease to exist unless we fulfill our duty and the responsibility to work together to address this issue in a resolute way and speed up the process of ratification and the entry into force of the CTBT. We sincerely hope that today's conference will send a strong message to all states in this respect, thus contributing to the consolidation of the nuclear non-proliferation and the disarmament regime. Thank you very much.
I thank the political director from the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Romania for his statements. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is now 1 o'clock, and I will have to adjourn this conference. We will resume at 1500 hours, 3 p.m., and continue our deliberations under Agenda Item 8, General Exchange of Views by ratifiers and signatories on facilitating the entry into force of the CTBT. The meeting stands adjourned until 1500 hours sharp, 3 p.m. Have a nice lunch.